Welcome to Pulse of Tech by SEAP, Pune's leading technology podcast from SEAP, the city's premier platform for tech organizations delivering cutting edge discussions and insights.
We often believe that the path to a tech stardom either starts from a computer lab or a coding bootcamp. But for our guest today, it started with a childhood habit of identifying patterns. Today, we are talking to Monish Darda, who is the chief mentor for iCertis and the co-founder of his ninth venture, Humantronic. Let's welcome Monish today. Hi Monish, how are you?
I'm good, Parijat, great to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you first of all on this episode of Pulse of Tech by SEAP. So welcome to the episode.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
So Monish, I want to start with the first question around your history, where you returned to India.
Makes me feel ancient when you say history.
Not like that. Not like
I'm
that.
kidding.
Yeah, you returned to India like mid PhD to fulfill a promise to your mother. Looking back, do you think it was like an logical move or an emotional move back then?
So it's very interesting. I was loving my PhD, I was loving my master's. At some point I got this moment which said, where is this PhD leading to? It's too much work, right? And not enough doing, kind of. So, and then of course I had promised my mom that I would come back as soon as I finished my education and not settle back in the US. But you know how moms and sons and promises go, right? But the good thing was, I thought I would actually be more comfortable coming back to India than I would be living in the US. Though I loved living in the US, it didn't feel home, even after 3.5 years. Yeah. And remember, those times in the late 80s were very different, right? So you couldn't call, you didn't have Skype, you didn't have anything. Calling was like, I remember,
once in a week kind of a
thing. My goodness, no, once a month, because we had to save money to make a call.
Right? Trunk call kind of a thing.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. So we had to be careful with the money, we had to be careful with calling back. So 3.5 years was quite a long time to be away from your family. And we are a very close family. Even today, we're extremely close. So I think there was a lot of emotion in there, less logic. So it also boils down to serendipity, right? You take some decisions and you figure out, hey, this was wrong because of that, or this was right because of that. This was one of these things. There was more emotion than logic for sure.
Okay. And now reflecting back on it, obviously it has turned out well. So
see, whatever I did, I'm sure it would have turned out well. Right?
Yeah. So like the reflection of it is how do you want to reflect on it now about?
That's a good question. I think what I have seen in these situations is you take decisions and you have data at the moment, and you take those decisions. Once you have taken them, you move on. You never go back, because you did take the right decision at the right time. Whether it turned out to be wrong or right, only time can tell. But you have to take a decision. If you don't, it's like writing code with no bugs. You can't do that. The best way to do it is not to write any code. Right. So you have to take decisions. Once you've taken decisions, you don't look back. You don't regret. And I've been fortunate enough. I'm very grateful that the decision I took actually worked out very well. Those were times of the brain drain. Every other week, there would be a big article in the news saying, hey, the government is spending so much money on every student in IITs, and everybody is going out. And I said, hey, I'm coming back, Do
you want to fund me on this one?
Exactly.
I want to take us back to that Thermax moment. So what we have read is that you were a document courier for a boiler factory, right? And what is the exact question that the executive asked you about Fortran that changed your life choices?
So great question, by the way, and great research by you and your team. I think it was very interesting. I was in this first ever kind of bachelor's program, which was called a sandwich course.
Okay.
So you spent 2 semesters of your 4 years in a factory working at a company on the shop floor. I was a mechanical engineer, so that's how I got into Thermax. And I was not actually a document courier. It was even much more worse than that. I was a welder. so, so I was on the shop floor welding, right?
Okay.
And then my boss, or the head of department, actually not even my direct boss, he said, Monish, I heard you know some programming. Somebody told me that you know some Fortran programming. And I said, yes. And then he said, what are you doing on the shop floor? Why don't you help me design some chimney design software?
Okay.
And I said, what is it? And he said, for every boiler needs a chimney, and the chimney design, we take a couple of weeks to do that. And it's fairly straightforward. There are formulae, there's wind speeds, there's height of the chimney, there's sections that are required. So he said, if you know Fortran, why don't you do this? And I said, I would love to, but you have to give me some tools. And he said, no, we have a sister company. Thermax had a sister company, which was an IT company at that time.
Okay.
So he said, why don't you go there? I'll give you an intro, and you should go work there. And I said, I've also started learning C. I would love to use C. And he said, it's not about what you use. I just want to get the job done. If you have business value, you don't care which tool gets the job done, as long as it gets done right.
I mean, you have always described that the journey from 50 million to 250 million ARR is the hardest part of any startup journey.
Yeah.
So, and this has been like, why do you think that 90% of the companies fail in that part?
Yeah. No, that's a great question again. I think 0 to 1 is almost equally harder as 50 to 250 is, but there's one fundamental difference. In 50 to 250, what you as a founder, or as founders, with that Samir with me as my co-founder, do is fundamentally different than what you do in the 50 to 250 million journey.
Okay.
What do I mean by that? I mean, you have to change your personality, your way of working, your learning ability and your delegation all at the same time in that journey. Yeah. So by the time you get to the 250 million mark, I can vouch in my journey that I was a completely different person.
Yeah, because you start scaling, right?
You start scaling, the problems that you solve are now completely different.
Okay.
You're not at a level where you're operational anymore, you're more strategic. The decisions that you take not just affect a small group of people that you know well, but hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people,
right,
that you don't know well. And so you have to be really conscious of that fact. Right?
Okay.
And also that's when you scale not just the number of people, you also scale the amount of work that you produce by when you say something or do something.
Okay.
Right? This actually came to me late. Samir understood this very well. It came late to me saying, if I say something in a meeting, what are the repercussions of that?
Yeah.
Right? If I say that we will do this, what does it actually, it's almost a domino effect. You end up having 5,000 actions in the company without even realizing that you started something.
So thought leadership started playing a very important role from
not
there.
Just thought leadership. I mean, at the 0 to 1 million also you need thought leadership. You have to figure out what is different, your USP, you have to think laterally, think broad. All of that happens. I think it's a combination that happens at one time, which makes it really, really hard. And that's where most people cannot cope up. That's where most founders can fight. That's where most founders start disagreeing. Because 50 million ARR, you're actually a good company.
Good
right?
company, yeah.
So now you're thinking, oh, now I can, either sell or I can do something. I'm already like successful, but you're not there yet if your aspirations are much bigger. So you start looking at things very differently. And you start doing that, it makes it very hard for you to change yourself. Because you think the world has to change because you've made something successful. That never happens in real life, right? You have to change, and your world around you has already changed. And I think that realization was very interesting for me.
So with that, I wanted to get into the part where iCertis is your 7th startup, right?
Yes.
What is the fundamental problem which you are trying to solve in iCertis? I mean, I have to ask, like, point blank on this?
No, absolutely. That's a great question. And you'll be surprised to know many people are. When Samir and I actually first talked about iCertis, we were not trying to solve a problem at all.
Okay.
Right? It was very
interesting.
Very interesting because both of us were coming out of acquisitions.
Okay.
Blade Logic had already gone public in 2007.
Yes.
And on the NASDAQ, and then 2008 we sold Blade Logic to BMC Software.
Yes.
2009 we started iCertis. At that time Samir was also going through an acquisition.
Okay.
He was the CEO of AztecSoft. He had sold AztecSoft to Mindtree, and
Okay.
we both had a cup of coffee on Ferguson Road, and we said, what should we do now? We can't sit at home. Kalpana and Sarika, our wives, wouldn't allow that. So make sure that you do something. And we said, what do we want to do? And we said, both of us said, I have lots of ideas, but nothing that I'm really passionate about yet. And Samir said, but how do we actually think about what we have done so far? And as I said, this was my 7th startup in iCertis. So, I said, I've done a lot of stuff. I've done a lot of distributed systems, I've built systems. And Samir said, I've also had a lot of fun. But how do we actually think about building a consequential company out of India? And we accidentally got into contract lifecycle management. And it was funny, Samir called me one day and he said, hey, I ran into a friend of mine who is in Microsoft. He's a lawyer, and he said he just scrapped a project worth $18 million because he couldn't do what he wanted to do. And I was telling him we are in the Microsoft ecosystem, we are building these ERPs around products. And he said, I don't understand that, but can you build a CLM system for me? So Monish, what do you think? And I said, I know all about CLM. In BMC, after the acquisition, I had actually been involved very deeply in cloud lifecycle management. And I said, I know about CLM. And Samir said, how? I don't know about it. And I said, that's what I did in BMC for a year. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, cloud lifecycle management. And he said, no, I mean contract lifecycle management, which is completely different. And I said, okay, I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
That's how we started, right?
Okay.
And the fundamental problem we solve at iCertis is to make sure that contracts, which is a fundamental way to define a relationship between two entities, is optimized.
Okay.
Right? So you want to make sure that you can optimize that relationship as much as you can.
Okay.
Right? So that's what iCertis fundamentally does. It solves that problem of how do you take a contract or a set of ideas or intents, build it into a contract, and make sure that in the real world it comes close to what you intended.
Okay. So I have now 2 follow-up questions on this.
Absolutely.
One is about, because it is about Microsoft's relationship which you just spoke about, and the other one is about the contract lifecycle management as well. So my first question is about that your first major customer was Microsoft and now is a critical partner as well, right? So how do you navigate the balance between being natively on Azure and competing for the same C-suite attention as Microsoft? There is no conflict of interest there or something?
Microsoft concentrates on productivity.
Okay.
The whole Copilot suite, Office suite is really all about productivity. And of course, there's the Azure business and so on and so forth. But if you look at the Copilot, we actually complement the Copilot very well because we provide all the intelligence needed, the plugs needed for a contract management system to actually become better. And from there, because we look at it not just from the management of the contract itself, the intelligence behind what goes into the contract and what goes into the data that actually creates the contract and the peripheral metadata that is around the contract. So there is actually a very complementary relationship, and it always has been with Microsoft and iCertis. Okay. And there is really no competition there, right?
See, I can't get away from not addressing the elephant in the room around agentic AI solutions, and that's why I was talking to you about that contract lifecycle management as well. So you have started advocating agentic AI, where agents act on contracts, right? So I wanted to understand that if we are talking about an agentic solution, and to manage the contract life cycle, the agent can continuously reject a contract as well, right? How do you so this has been a question across the industry also, that the human in the loop is very important for most of these things, right? Because once the model starts hallucinating, it will keep doing the same. So how do you keep that balance in the solutions which you develop?
Yeah, I think with our Vera suite of AI solutions across the board, the agents that we have, one fundamental kind of foundation of all that is responsible AI. Right?
Okay.
How do I make sure that every action that is taken, how do I make sure that everything that the agent does goes through boundaries? It's almost like a contract, right? For
Yeah.
an agent to work, you need boundaries. You need a construct which says, hey, you cannot go beyond this on the left or the right or the front or the back. So you want to make sure that those guardrails are in place.
Okay.
So you put those guardrails around that agent. With agentic AI, I think very simply put, when the agent determines or the human guardrails determine that an agent needs to go to a human, it has to go to a human.
Okay.
The way people do this today is a combination of prompt engineering and a combination of rules which says, hey, you don't have permissions. But what it means is that your guardrails define where the human comes in, right? And the human comes in two ways in my mind. One is the human in the loop.
Okay.
Where the human comes in where there's an escalation, where the guardrails need to be broken or the guardrails prevent you from taking action, then the agent or the agentic orchestration needs to go to a human. But there's also something called a human on the loop.
Okay.
Humans looking at the loop and saying, hey, is this going as per the guardrails? And is anything breaking? And that is also as important as human in the loop.
Okay.
So the human on the loop actually look at what agents are doing, what their audits are, why they took decisions in this situation and not in that. What are the hallucination boundaries that you can figure out? Lot of work has been gone in over the years to make these agents very responsible, and also making sure that they take the right actions and involve the right humans at the right time.
Okay. Okay. You believe that heavily regulated industries like healthcare and finance will be the first big winners in AI. So most of the people think that these industries are too slow to innovate. Why is the red tape actually a AI accelerator?
No, so very interesting. They're probably not going to be the first, but they're going to be the big winners in AI in my mind. So think about it this way: agents should not do, right? Wherever there is, broad acceptance, like if you look at Instagram or Twitter or whatever, X, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., you'll see a lot of posts. This agent went crazy and deleted a database.
Yeah.
That agent went crazy and deleted a whole, branch. The thing is, agents will hallucinate. That's the nature of LLMs till we fix that core problem on our way to agentic, artificial general intelligence. But till then, you have to assume that agents will hallucinate. So you have to have guardrails. Now, regulated industries have the best guardrails in the world, right?
Okay.
If you want to launch a new drug in the market as a pharmaceutical company, you have to go through years of red tape to actually launch one molecule.
One molecule,
right?
Yeah.
So that compliance, that structure, that discipline in that process actually gives you some of the best guardrails there are in process. Once you have guardrails, the agents can do a lot more.
They are already taken care of.
They're already the human in the loop, the human on the loop, where to interfere, where not to go, permissions, they're all
already
defined.
taken care of.
Exactly, and very meticulously.
Correct.
If you look at a drug application, or if you look at a clinical trial, or if you look at from a financial services perspective, how you calculate your debt.
Mortgage calculators, all
mortgage
of
calculators, even in the insurance industry, if you look at, how you calculate your premiums, they're very detailed. There's very detailed documentation that exists.
Yeah, because the regulation is also that strong.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Exactly. And that means the potential of the agentic, kind of the whole world of agentic AI, creating a lot of business value is very high in those industries.
I have a fun question to
Okay.
ask you, right? I don't know if it is fun or not, but I'll still go ahead.
Okay.
It's a chaos.
Let's make it fun.
Yeah, let's make it fun. So, chaos engineering is a word which is more around in engineering discipline, right? But you introduce that in a very very interesting way in ICERT in your teams. So, first of all, I would want to understand. So, I have done my research, I know what it is, but I want the audience to know how do you introduce it in your teams, and just removing that key person from your team, doesn't it like just change everything in that team?
So it's interesting. You're referring to this experiment that I've been doing for a while.
Yeah.
And I won't call it an experiment now because it's a proven process.
Yeah.
You have a well-functioning team. You have a good leader. You take away the leader, you figure out what happens to the team.
Yeah.
Right. And you also mentioned it that it's a little bit cruel, right? It sounds, very cruel in terms of, how the team feels. Suddenly, I don't have a manager, I have a new manager, whatever that is. But what I found is very interesting. I think we as managers, and I'm not talking leaders here, specifically managers, we as managers actually do not fully understand the potential of our teams. We always underestimate them because that's how we are wired, usually.
Yes.
Right? And I'm making an average statement, not a very specific statement, but most of us, right? And it includes me as well, right? We underestimate our teams. We always think, hey, a good leader will actually make a better team, which is true. But what happens is, if you have a very good leader, then the leadership qualities in a team are repressed. So chaos engineering in this context actually tells me that if I take away a very good leader and let the team figure out who takes lead, I'll find the next leaders. Right? Our problem, and I said $50 to $250 million journey is the hardest, one of the hardest journeys in the world in the life of a company. I think this is one of the reasons, this is one of the learnings I had, that you cannot just hire leaders. You have to nurture them.
Nurture them, yes.
Right? And if you're nurturing them, you have to give them a stage. And the only way to give them a stage is to force them to lead.
Yep.
And this is a classic way of making a whole team understand, hey, figure out who wants to step up, who wants to take that responsibility, who is ready, or who feels and is confident that is ready. And then support them from outside. So actually it's not cruelty, right? Yeah. And of course when you take away
now
the
when you
leader,
explain it in that way, it doesn't look like, but I mean,
it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you completely on this. I've worked or built teams which are like huge teams, but the most important thing which I have also learned over all these years is that rather than making somebody the leader of the team, let the team select a leader out of it is always a better way of, or not select, actually let some person take up that responsibility has always proven much valuable than just putting a leader there. Actually, I wanted to talk about a sensitive topic here, like the passing away of your co-founder Samir Bodas earlier this year, right? Must be a big impact to the company. So how has his legacy changed the way you view your Forte values, which both of you built together, right?
Yeah,
so if you are okay to talk about it.
No, absolutely. I think whenever I think about Samir, it brings a big smile on my face. We had so many lovely moments and some lovely memories. I think it's just, I'm so grateful that I had the time that I had with him. And Forte was very near and dear to our hearts when we came up with this whole construct of what our company's values should be. Fairness, openness, respect, teamwork and execution, that's what Forte stands for. We were thinking these should not be values on a wall. We were thinking, hey, if I have to live them, then, and I expect other people to live them, then they have to be real.
Yeah.
They have to be pragmatic.
Practiced. Yeah.
They have to be not just practiced, but they have to be refined over a period of time. I'll give you an example. This was Samir's favorite example. He used to say, when you go to the US, Monish, when you come to the US, he lived in the US for many, many years. And at that time, we all carried visiting cards, right? Business cards. And it was very normal when you walked into a meeting to pass on business cards to people. And usually, if the person was on the other side of the table, you would just throw the card so that it would reach him or her across the table. And he said, would you do that in Japan?
Oh no.
I said, no, absolutely not. It's
Not
like,
at all.
it's disrespect.
Yeah.
And he used to say, this is where nuance comes in. You can't just say, one of our values is respect.
Respect, yeah.
You have to define the context in which that respect means something to people.
Totally.
And I think that was amazing, because that changed how iCertis worked in the company. Like everybody, any iCertian, you wake them from their sleep and say, what is Forte? They would come up with Forte. It's not like, it's just 5 words. It has meaning to an iCertian. All in all, in fact, all of our board members, and we have a very illustrious board, they all went back to their portfolio companies and said, look what iCertis is doing with their values. We would love for you to try and get to that level of thinking. And we do Forte workshops, we did Forte interviews, so we built Forte into the culture of the company.
Okay.
And I think Samir's passing, that's one of his big legacies. I think Forte continues to be as important as it was when he was around. So that is something that will never change, I hope, in the company, and I hope it actually inspires people who leave iCertis, go somewhere else, or are in touch with as our customers are, and maybe learn a little bit from there in terms of how we embedded it in every iCertian's values. I think it's something that changed me as a person. It definitely made me a better person, even in my personal life, not just in my professional life. Because fairness, openness, respect, teamwork and execution are all something that we require in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
You could take any 5 words and say, hey, these are as important to me, because values do not get undervalued just because the word is different. But you can actually take the essence of that and apply it to almost any situation that you face.
Got it. Maybe the next question is moving away from iCertis a bit. So you recently have stepped back from the daily operations at iCertis and launched Humantronic. So that's a bold move.
That's a big move, yes.
And I just wanted to understand again, what is the AI impact which you are trying to create there?
So not just AI impact. I think 2 things have happened. One is, my earlier example, take a leader out and see what happens.
You are doing that to yourself now.
I'm doing that to myself in a big way. It's a new company, it's a different company. Both the founders stepping back. I mean, Samir is stepping back in a very different way, unfortunately, but stepping back, I'm stepping back in a different way. Gives the company more room to grow, more room to operate in conditions that are very quickly changing. That's one part of it. The second part of it, I believe, is that, I've always had this idea of what is intent, right? Human intent. Like you think about, I want to do this. When you start thinking about that, by the time you actually get to doing it, that's a journey.
Correct.
I want to own a house, I want to buy a car, I want to be successful, I want to play this sport, I want to learn this language. All of this intent, by the time it gets converted to execution, to outcome, there is a journey.
Correct.
Right? And if you think about what AI is bringing together, why people are spending trillions of dollars almost, right, on this technology, is because there is a promise that AI can take your intent and convert it into outcomes. Right? That's the purpose of AI that people are thinking AI will fulfill, right? Especially with artificial general intelligence. Otherwise, why throw money at it?
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
What I think is now, today AI is being used as a tool. Actually, I'm thinking 5 to 10 years from now, if and when. There's no if, I would say when we get to artificial general intelligence or whatever the meaning is today, as we understand it, it's going to fundamentally change how we work, especially in business, right? It means that there will be 4 or 5 people at the head of the company who provide the creativity, the ideas, and the resources, and the AI would be then actually the one that is responsible for taking you to the outcomes.
Okay.
And the companies would run autonomously, right? So now, how do I prepare myself for that eventual future that we see coming very quickly? And that is Humantronic. That is how Humantronic was born. The idea is that humans plus AI have to work together. AI cannot just be a tool. It has to be a part and parcel of how a human operates, and vice versa. If it is not, then its potential is never going to be realized fully. And so, if you think about a journey, from intent to outcome, if you are working together with AI, you have a better chance of success of getting to the outcomes than if you had divided that workflow into several parts. Right?
Okay.
So what we do is we enable people to experience AI in very different ways. Like for example, if there is a CEO who wants to increase their sales, it is almost like, when I said, from the 50 to 250, I keep going back to that because there's lots of learnings there. You almost had to learn, the impact of what you said.
Yes.
Because those cascaded into multiple actions.
Correct.
Here's a classic example. The CEO says, or the board says, we want to increase our sales by 10%. That actually has a domino effect across a large company with maybe hundreds of thousands of actions that follow. Because increase sales by 10% could be increasing price. There's one way to increase your dollar value. Introducing a new SKU so that you could sell more and get more money. Increasing your salespeople. Increasing your geographical spread and say, okay, I'm going to open an office in Japan, or I'm going to do business in Middle East. It could be more training. So there could be like 50 things that you could use to increase your sales. Now, whoever is in that leadership
consolidating
position,
your SKUs can also be one of them.
Yeah, consolidating your SKUs, going to customers for more expansion, cross-selling, partnership. You could think about like 500 things.
Correct.
Now the person who is responsible has to kind of say, hey, we can't do all 500. We have limited resources, limited time. So the leader's job is to kind of filter that out and say, okay, here's the 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 things that I'm going to focus on. Right? But even that cascades into hundreds of thousands of actions in an enterprise. Like changing the price of a SKU probably involves 20 people in a company like SAP or Salesforce or Johnson & Johnson or Mercedes-Benz. Right? It's a whole process. Now, how do you use AI and humans working together to go through that whole process? And how at that level, where you say, I want to increase my sales to 10%, I get visibility across the company saying, where are my bottlenecks? Where are things that I've decided I want to do are not happening? How do I make them, be done more efficiently? Which means removing that friction in that whole chain. That's what we do at Humantronic.
Okay, awesome. So I was also going to, talk to you about your recent book which you have penned.
The DeepSeek moment.
The DeepSeek moment, which has sparked a lot of conversation about Sputnik of our AI era, right? So in this book, you have dissected how lean, efficient model from China fundamentally shifted the economics of intelligence. So if you want to talk to our viewers about the book and how this all has panned out.
No, so the idea came because I thought it was a revelation, right? At that time, before DeepSeek, Anthropic and OpenAI were running away with the market. There was obviously a barrier to entry there, right? Because large language models needs hundreds of millions of dollars to train. Lots of GPUs. You know where NVIDIA is now. I don't need to say anything about that, right?
Everybody does.
Exactly. And now you look at, a small company out of China coming in, presenting a model that was almost as good as GPT was at that time, at a very significantly less cost
Yes.
and very significantly less resources.
Yep.
So very little doing a lot of stuff. Just because they could do things like mixture of experts, they could do things like distillation that nobody had ever done at that scale or thought about at that scale. So coming out of that, it broke one of the fundamental assumptions of the new, if I call it the AI era, saying that, hey, you have to have very deep pockets and very deep know-how and very deep access to GPUs to actually get to a model that is reasonably as good as the top models in the world. And by breaking that, it was almost like, when electricity was discovered or invented, how long did it take to make it practical? That loop was probably over, many decades.
Yeah.
Same with cars, right?
Correct.
You had the steam engine, you had the combustion engine, but by the time transportation became ubiquitous, there was a long journey. You're seeing AI, the AI age is compressing everything. So this is one of those steps to making this ubiquitous, making this easily available. That was a huge moment in the AI age. And when we look back after 10 years, we'll see how important it was. And that actually inspired the book, right? And I'm very grateful to my co-author Harshad Oak, who helped me write the book. I was in the middle of all kinds of chaos. Samir was unwell in that period when we were writing the book, but Harshad was great. He did most of the writing and expanded those ideas, and we came up with the book. Springer, took up the publication, which I was very grateful for. Anand Deshpande of Persistent, Anand was very kind to write the foreword. So it all turned out to be, a very, very fulfilling exercise for me.
So, Monish, I want to go a little bit of like promotional here.
Of course,
And
SEAP, I know.
Yeah, and SEAP is something which is which you've always mentioned is in the fabric of the city, right? And all the and majority of the software exporters from Pune, and you have been an integral part of that for quite some time.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk about the relationship between SEAP and iCertis, or I mean all ventures you have?
Not just iCertis, right?
All ventures you have.
SEAP has been woven into the fabric of Pune, I must say, right? And I remember the early days when, my first company, WebSim Technologies, which I co-founded, in the early 90s, it was very, I think some of the younger generation would not even kind of comprehend. It's like punch cards, right? You're programming with punch cards. It was the same thing with the software industry. There was Bajaj Auto, there was Kirloskar Cummins, and there were a couple of other, obviously Thermax was one of them, as I mentioned. There were 3 or 4 of these brick and mortar companies who were driving all of software in Pune, right? They were the ones where, a lot of the Pune software talent was groomed. Obviously university, when it started the BSc and the MSc computer science courses, the university took a big part of that. But SEAP grew from those roots. Right?
Okay.
And a lot of the initial people that were involved in SEAP, who drove SEAP as an organization, were the pioneers who actually started exporting software from Pune. And so I think 2 things. I think one thing, without organizations and the people behind those organizations that are selfless, that work for the community doesn't grow. If the community doesn't grow, the city doesn't grow. If the city doesn't grow, companies like iCertis don't grow. So there's a lot of credit that goes to these communities, these people, and these organizations. The other one I would mention is the Computer Society of India. When it started, I think a lot of it was seeded in Pune.
Yes.
And I think SEAP has given to Pune as much as anybody else, right? Being woven into the software fabric of Pune, and I'm deeply grateful. And that's why I love doing this podcast. When you came back, I said, yeah, absolutely, I want to do this. 100%. So I think this is an important, extremely important organization, especially because of the people behind it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for first of all doing this.
Of course.
Now I'll go to Monish as a person, and you have self-proclaimed yourself as a gadget freak, right?
Absolutely.
And a hardcore gamer. Very interesting for me, by the way. So you have said in your video as well that games keep you fit. I want to understand, how do computer games keep you fit? And strategy also, like strategic games as Call of Duty, and how do this all dynamic work?
Yeah.
And how first of all, how do they keep you fit?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, right? And it's very interesting. I think, given, like, many of the viewers probably will be software engineers,
Yeah.
or in the software community. Our lives are almost like doctors, right?
Right.
Things will happen, production systems will fail, there'll be late night calls, you have to, most people work with people from the US, different time zones, Europe, Australia. Our schedules are tight. Our discipline about food, etc., is very hard to find.
Correct.
So keeping mentally fit is very important. I think that was my break. Going at like 2 in the morning after I finish all my calls. And today also my routine hasn't changed. Both Kalpana and I, my wife, we both go to bed at 2 in the morning. So we are up
Ooh.
till then, because it's just easier, right?
Okay.
Lifestyle wise, calls wise, activity wise, kids wise. And if you want to be mentally fit, you want to be able to plug out yourself completely from that intensity, right? I think for the longest time, for the first time I played my first game, which was called Zaxxon, on you won't believe it, an IBM PC XT, which was like one of the first kind of computers PCs that went went really popular.
I've heard. It was not there.
Beautiful. Those were like beautifully built machines, especially the keyboards. I still use mechanical keyboards. I don't use the soft touch keyboards.
Yeah, I do it too.
Lovely, fantastic. So I've always found solace in gaming.
Okay.
Right. And then of course I graduated. I shouldn't say graduated, because PCs are still elite gaming machines. But I love the PS5 and obviously the Xbox, based on what game I play, of course. But that gives me that plug out.
Oh.
And that keeps me mentally fit. If I am mentally fit, the physical fitness actually is easy.
So you and your wife both play the game, is it?
I wish. She has her own video games. She hates it, but my son does. He's still a gamer. He loves gaming, and he was the one who taught me a lot of tricks.
Okay.
And when cheat codes were really popular. So
very interesting.
It was a lot of fun. It was.
Okay. I do this question. I mean, this question is where I try to end this, because I can keep talking to you for the entire day, but for the restriction of time, I have to do this. So, Pune, and what is the best memory of you and Pune? And it can be anything, just whatever you want to mention. And
that's an interesting question. So, I was born and brought up in Pune.
Yeah.
I spent my entire life except for a few stints in the US. I think if I go back in my life, my best memory of Pune that I still treasure, you've probably been on Karve Road and Nurstop, that area, right? Nurstop was at one time, a few years ago, was one of the most polluted areas in Asia or something. It was crazy, like the traffic. But imagine when I was a kid, there was a big banyan tree right at that corner, right? Like a huge banyan tree.
Okay.
Right? And there's this game called Sur Parambya that you play, as a Maharashtrian, as a Puneri, right? Where there's a few kids would gather, and you make a circle and you'd put a stick in there. The person who had the den would guard the stick, and the others would try to steal the stick from the circle.
Okay.
Right? And then And it's called Sur Parambia because the banyan tree had those, vines hanging,
Correct.
and you could swing by them, right? So you would one person would distract that
The other
person
one.
who was guarding the stick, and the other person would swing and take the stick away. That was the game, and we would play it at
Non-stop.
Yeah, non-stop, right? And Pune was so much fun at that.
No, nobody would. These times, nobody can think about there was anything like that at non-stop.
Exactly. No, the whole, I think, Karve Road was filled with banyan trees. It was lined with banyan trees at that time. After non-stop, it was pretty much all fields. Very few houses. I remember my dad coming to pick my mom up. She used to work in a bank because the rickshaw wouldn't go beyond non-stop.
Beyond non-stop.
So he would come to non-stop to pick her up and take her back home. And so those were the days where after non-stop there was no Pune.
Yeah, 20 years back when I came to Pune, when I was in my college or school days, I remember that yes, the area beyond null stop was hardly
Hardly anything.
Hardly anything.
Right.
Okay.
And now it's all crazy, but that's the price of growth. But I think those were that was the Pune I really remember. Those were my first early memories where, as a kid, when I was growing up, it was so much fun.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. I hope you had fun doing this.
Oh, absolutely. I had loads of fun. Thank you.
It's my absolute pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much for being with us here.
Likewise. Thank you. I'm so grateful.